Teacher. Why didn't you study? Student. A year has 365 days for you to study. After taking away 52 Sundays, there are only 313 days left. There are 50 days in the summer that are way too hot to work. So there are only 263 days left. We sleep 8 hours a day. In a year, that counts up to 122 days. So now we're left with 141 days. If we fooled around for only 1 hour a day, 15 days would be gone, so we would be left with 126 days. We spend 2 hours eating each day. 30 days are used in this way in the year, and we are left with 96 days in our year. We spend 1 hour a day speaking to friends and family. That takes away 15 days more, and we are left with 81 days. Exams and tests take up at least 35 days in your year. Hence, you are only left with 46 days. Taking off approximately 40 days of holidays, you are only left with 6 days. Say you are sick for a minimum of 3 days. You're left with 3 days in the year to study. Let's say you only go out for 2 days. You're left with 1 day. But that 1 day is your birthday. That's why I did not study. So Dr. Maguire is reluctantly sitting at the dinner table with his in-laws. The phone rings and Dr. Maguire answers it. At the other end of the line is one of his colleagues who says, Dr. Thompson and myself are sitting here with the cards and a new bottle of 18 years old single malt. Do you want to join us for an evening of poker? Dr. Maguire puts the phone down and turns to his wife's family and says, I'm sorry I have to go. It's an emergency. His wife asks, How serious is it? Dr. Maguire replies, Well, 2 of my colleagues are there, but they said if I don't get over there, then the 18-year-old will be gone. A virile, middle-aged Italian gentleman named Luigi was relaxing at his favorite bar in Rome when he managed to attract a spectacular young blonde woman. Things progressed to the point where he invited her back to his apartment, and after some small talk, they retired to his bedroom where he rattled her senseless. After a pleasant interlude, he asked with a smile, So, are you finished? She paused for a second, frowned, and replied, No. Surprised, Luigi reached for her and the rattling resumed. This time she thrashed about wildly and there were screams of passion. The sex finally ends, and again Luigi smiles and asks, You finish? Again, after a short pause, she returns his smile, cuddles closer to him, and softly says, No. Stunned, but damned if he was going to leave this woman unsatisfied, Luigi reaches for the woman yet again. Using the last of his strength, he barely manages it, but they end together screaming, bucking, clawing, and ripping the bedsheets. Exhausted, Luigi falls onto his back, gasping. Barely able to turn his head, he looks into her eyes, smiles proudly, and asks again, You finish? Barely able to speak, the beautiful blonde whispers in his ear, No, I'm Norwegian. Did you hear about the teacher who was helping one of her pupils put on his boots? He asked for help, and she could see why. Even with her pulling and him pushing, the little boots still didn't want to go on. By the time they got the second boot on, she had worked up a sweat. She almost cried when the little boy said, Teacher, they're on the wrong feet. She looked, and sure enough, they were. Unfortunately, it wasn't any easier pulling the boots off than it was putting them on. She managed to keep her cool as together they worked to get the boots back on, this time on the correct feet. He then announced, These aren't my boots. She bit her tongue rather than get right in his face and scream, Why didn't you say so, like she wanted to? Once again, she struggled to help him pull the ill-fitting boots off his little feet. No sooner had they got the boots off when he said, They're my brother's boots, but my mom made me wear 'em today. Now she didn't know if she should laugh or cry, but she mustered up what grace and courage she had left to wrestle the boots back onto his feet again. Helping him into his coat, she asked, Now where are your mittens? He said, I stuffed 'em in the toes of my boots. She'll be eligible for parole in 3 years. A handful of 7-year-old children were asked what they thought of beer. There were some interesting responses, but the last one is especially good. I think beer must be good. My dad says the more beer he drinks, the prettier my mom gets. Tim, 7 years old. Beer makes my dad sleepy, and we get to watch what we want on television when he is asleep, so beer is nice. Melanie, 7 years old. My mom and dad both like beer. My mom gets funny when she drinks it and takes her top off at parties. But dad doesn't think this is very funny. Grady, 7 years old. My mom and dad talk funny when they drink beer, and the more they drink, the more they give kisses to each other, which is a good thing. Toby, 7 years old. My dad gets funny on beer. He is funny. He also wets his pants sometimes, so we shouldn't have too much. Anju. Sarah, 7 years old. My dad loves beer. The more he drinks, the better he dances. One time he danced right into the pool. Lily, 7 years old. I don't like beer very much. Every time Dad drinks it, he burns the sausages on the barbecue, and they taste disgusting. Ethan, 7 years old. I give Dad's beer to the dog, and he goes to sleep. Shirley, 7 years old, and the best response. My mom drinks beer, and she says silly things and picks on my father. Whenever she drinks beer, she yells at Dad and tells him to go bury his bone down the street again, but that doesn't make any sense. Jack, 7 years. A professor started his class on a very serious topic. The moment he turned towards the blackboard, one of the students whistled. He turned, looked at the class, and asked the whistler's name. No one answered. The professor peacefully kept the pen in his pocket, saying, "Lecture ends here. I'll tell you a story to utilize the remaining time." Everyone became interested. Last night I tried hard to sleep, but it was miles away from my eyes, so I thought I'd better get petrol in my car, which will save my time next morning and might induce sleep. After having my tank full, I started roaming in that area, enjoying the peace of a traffic-free ride. Suddenly, on the corner, I saw a girl who was as young and beautiful as the clothes she was wearing. Must have been returning from a party. Out of courtesy, I turned my car toward her and asked if I may be of any help. She asked me if I could drop her at her home. She'd be very obliged, to which I agreed. She sat in the front seat with me. We started talking, and to my amazement, she was very intelligent and had control over many topics that many youngsters don't. When we reached her address, she admitted my courteous nature and behavior and accepted that she had fallen in love with me. I also admired her intelligence and beauty and admitted that I've also started liking her. I told her about my job as a professor in the university. The girl asked for my number, which I gave her willingly. Then she asked me a favor, which I couldn't have denied naturally. She said that her brother is a student in the same university and asked me to take care of him since we'll be in a long relationship now. I asked the name of the student. She said that I'll recognize him with one of his very prominent quality. He whistles a lot. All eyes in the classroom turned towards the boy who had whistled. The professor said, "I didn't buy my PhD in psychology. I earned it." "Oh, yeah, come out, you stupid fool." A blonde calls her boyfriend and says, "Please come over here and help me. I have a killer jigsaw puzzle, and I can't figure out how to get started." Her boyfriend asks, "What is it supposed to be when it's finished?" The blonde says, "According to the picture on the box, it's a rooster." Her boyfriend decides to go over and help with the puzzle. She lets him in and shows him where she has the puzzle spread all over the table. He studies the pieces for a moment, then looks at the box, then turns to her and says, "First of all, no matter what we do, we're not going to be able to assemble these pieces into anything resembling a rooster." He then takes her hand and says, "Secondly, I want you to relax. Let's have a nice cup of tea, and then," he said with a deep sigh, "let's put all these cornflakes back in the box." An Irishman on a deserted island for over 10 years sees a speck on the horizon drifting his way. What emerged from the surf was a wet-suited, black-clad figure. After taking some of the scuba off, there stood a gorgeous blonde. The blonde strides up to the stunned Irishman and says to him, "Tell me, how long has it been since you've had a cigarette?" "10 years," replied the amazed Irishman. She unzipped a waterproof pocket on the left sleeve of her wetsuit and pulled out a pack of cigarettes. He takes one, lights it, and takes a long drag. "Christ," says the man, "I'd forgotten how great a smoke can be." "And how long has it been since you've had a drop of whiskey?" asked the blonde. Gobsmacked, the castaway replied, 10 years. The blonde reaches over to her right sleeve, unzips a pocket, and hands him a flask. He has a long drink. Magic, truly fantastic, says the Irishman. At this point, the gorgeous blonde started to slowly unzip the long front of her wetsuit, right down the middle. Smiling, she looks at the trembling man and asks, "Now, how long has it been since you played around?" With tears in his eyes, the Irishman fell to his knees and sobbed, "Sweet Jesus, don't tell me you've got golf clubs in there too." An old lady and an old man are peering into the window of a travel agent in Manchester. A travel agent looks up from his desk and sees them looking at the glamorous destinations around the world. The agent had had a good week, and the dejected couple looking in the window gives him a rare feeling of generosity. He calls them into his shop. "I know that on your pension, you could never hope to have a holiday, so I am sending you off to a fabulous resort at my expense, and I won't take no for an answer." He takes them across the office and asks his secretary to write 2 flight tickets and to book a room in a 5-star hotel. They, as you would expect, gladly accept and are off. About a month later, the little old lady comes into the agent's shop. The agent asks, "And how did you enjoy your holiday?" The old lady replies, "The flight was exciting and the room was really lovely." "I've come to thank you, but one thing puzzles me. Who was that old guy I had to share the room with?" So 2 guys, Arthur and Derek, who work together, are both made redundant and they go to the job center. The lady at the desk asks Arthur about his occupation and he answers, "I was classed as a panty stitcher. I sew the elastic onto cotton underwear." The lady looks up panty stitcher, and seeing that it's classed as unskilled labor, she gives him £300, a fortnight's unemployment pay. The lady then asks Derek what his occupation is, and he replies, "I was the diesel fitter." Since diesel fitter is a skilled job, the lady gives Derek £600 a fortnight. When Arthur finds out, he's furious. He storms back in to find out why his friend and coworker is collecting double his pay. The lady at the desk explains, "Sir, panty stitchers are classed as unskilled labor, but diesel fitters are skilled labor." Arthur stares at her, then shouts, "Skilled labor? What do you mean? We worked together and I sewed the elastic on the panties then," and he pulls and stretches on the waistband. And if they are acceptable, he says, I think diesel fitter." Husband and wife are getting all snugly in bed. The passion is heating up. But then the wife stops and says, "I don't feel like it. I just want you to hold me." The husband says, "What?" The wife explains that he must not be in tune with her emotional needs as a woman. The husband realizes that nothing is going to happen tonight, and he might as well deal with it. So the next day, the husband takes her shopping at a big department store. He walks around and has her try on 3 very expensive outfits, and then tells his wife, "We'll take all 3 of them." Then he goes over and gets matching shoes worth $200 each, and then goes to the jewelry depot and gets a set of diamond earrings. The wife is so excited she thinks her husband has flipped out, but she does not care. She goes for the tennis bracelet. The husband says, "But you don't even play tennis. But okay, if you like it, then let's get it." The wife is jumping up and down, so excited she cannot even believe what is going on. She says, "I'm ready to go. Let's go to the cash register." The husband says, "No, no, no, honey, we're not going to buy all this stuff." The wife face goes blank. "No, honey, I just want you to hold this stuff for a while." Her face gets really red. She is about to explode, and then the husband says, "You must not be in tune with my financial needs as a man." I walked into the doctor's office, and the receptionist greeted me with a warm smile. "What seems to be the problem today?" she asked. "Shingles," I replied simply. She nodded, took down my name, address, and insurance information, and told me to have a seat. About 15 minutes later, a nurse's aide came out and called my name. "What brings you in today?" she asked. "Shingles," I said again. She jotted it down, checked my height and weight, and took my entire medical history before showing me to an examination room. Another 30 minutes passed before a nurse walked in. "So what seems to be the issue?" she asked. "Shingles," I repeated. She nodded and got to work. A blood test, a blood pressure check, an electrocardiogram, you name it, she did it. Then she handed me a gown and told me to undress and wait for the doctor. An hour later, the doctor finally entered. He looked at me sitting there in nothing but a paper gown and clipboard in hand and asked, "All right, what's the issue?" I gave him a patient smile and said, "Shingles." The doctor furrowed his brow. "Where are they?" he asked. With a grin, I replied, "Out on the truck. Where do you want me to unload them?" Eric and Ethel are flying to Australia for a 2-week holiday to celebrate their 50th wedding anniversary. Suddenly, over the public address system, the captain announces, "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm afraid I have some very bad news. Our engines have ceased functioning and we will attempt an emergency landing. Luckily, I see an uncharted island below us and we should be able to land on the beach. However, the odds are that because the island is uncharted, we may never be rescued, and we'll have to live on the island for the rest of our lives." Thanks to the skill of the flight crew, the plane lands safely on the island. An hour later, Eric turns to his wife and asks, "Ethel, did we pay our £5,000 income tax bill yet?" "No, sweetheart," she responds. Eric, still shaken from the crash landing, then asks, "Ethel, did we pay our American Express card yet?" "Oh, no, I'm sorry. I forgot to send the check," she says. "One last thing, Ethel. Did you remember to send checks for the Visa and MasterCard this month?" he asks. "Oh, forgive me, Eric," begged Ethel. "I didn't send those ones either. I didn't pay the TV license as well." Eric grabs her and gives her the biggest kiss in 50 years. Ethel pulls away and asks him, "What was that for?" Eric answers, "They'll find us for sure." A London lawyer runs a stop sign and gets pulled over by a Glasgow copper. He thinks that he is smarter than the cop because he is a lawyer from London and is certain that he has a better education than any jock cop. He decides to prove this to himself and have some fun at the Glasgow cop's expense. The Glasgow cop says, "License and registration, please." London lawyer says, "What for?" The Glasgow cop says, "You didn't come to a complete stop at the stop sign." London lawyer says, "I slowed down and no one was coming." Glasgow cop says, "You still didn't come to a complete stop. License and registration, please." London lawyer says, "What's the difference?" A Glasgow cop says, "The difference is you have to come to a complete stop. That's the law. License and registration, please." The London lawyer says, "If you can show me the legal difference between slow down and stop, I'll give you my license and registration and you give me the ticket. If not, you let me go and don't give me the ticket." Glasgow cop says, "Sounds fair. Exit your vehicle, sir." The London lawyer exits his vehicle. The Glasgow cop takes out his baton and starts beating the living shit out of the lawyer and says, "Do you want me to stop or just slow down?" This old man got his prescription for Viagra and went home to get ready for when his wife got home. He calls her on the phone and says, "I'll be home in an hour." "Perfect," she replies. The man thinks her agreement is because the doctor told him to take it an hour before. He takes the Viagra and waits. Well, an hour goes by. The man is ready to go, but no wife? She calls him on the phone and she says, "Traffic is terrible. I won't be there for about an hour and a half." The old man, frustrated, calls his doctor for advice. "What should I do?" he asks. The doctor replied, "It would be a shame to waste it. Do you have a housekeeper around?" "Yes," the old man replied. "Well, maybe you can occupy yourself with her instead," said the doctor. The old man then replied with dismay, "But I don't need Viagra with the housekeeper." Once upon a time, there lived a king who had the most beautiful daughter. But there was a problem. Everything the princess touched would melt, no matter what, metal, wood, stone. Anything she touched would melt. Because of this, men were afraid of her. Nobody would dare marry her. The king despaired. What could he do to help his daughter? He consulted his wizards and magicians. One wizard told the king, "If your daughter touches one thing that does not melt in her hands, she will be cured." The king was overjoyed and came up with a plan. The next day, he held a competition. Any man that could bring his daughter an object that would not melt would marry her and inherit the king's wealth. 3 young princes took up the challenge. The first brought a sword of the finest steel, but alas, when the princess touched it, it melted. The prince went away sadly. The second prince brought diamonds. He thought diamonds were the hardest substance in the world and would not melt. But alas, once the princess touched them, they melted. He, too, was sent away disappointed. The third prince approached. He told the princess, "Put your hand in my pocket and feel what is in there." The princess did as she was told, though she turned red. She felt something very hard. She held it in her hand, and it did not melt. The king was overjoyed. Everybody in the kingdom was overjoyed, and the prince married the princess, and they both lived happily ever after. Question: what was in the prince's pants? M&Ms, of course. They melt in your mouth, not in your hand. The newlywed farmer and his wife were visited by her mother, who immediately demanded an inspection of the place. The farmer had genuinely tried to be friendly to his new mother-in-law, hoping that it could be a friendly, non-antagonistic relationship. All to no avail, though, as she kept nagging them at every opportunity, demanding changes, offering unwanted advice, and generally making life unbearable for the farmer and his new bride. While they were walking through the barn during the forced inspection, the farmer's mule suddenly reared up and kicked the mother-in-law in the head, killing her instantly. It was a shock to all, no matter their feelings toward her demanding ways. At the funeral service a few days later, the farmer stood near the casket and greeted folks as they walked by. The pastor noticed that whenever a woman would whisper something to the farmer, he would nod his head yes and say something. Whenever a man walked by and whispered to the farmer, however, he would shake his head no and mumble a reply. Very curious as to this bizarre behavior, the pastor later asked the farmer what that was all about. The farmer replied, "The women would say, 'What a terrible tragedy.' And I would nod my head and say, 'Yes, it was.' The men would ask, 'Can I borrow that mule?' And I would shake my head and say, 'Can't, it's all booked up for a year.'" A man was sick and tired of going to work every day while his wife stayed home. He wanted her to see what he went through, so he prayed, "Dear Lord, I go to work every day and put in 8 hours while my wife merely stays at home. I want her to know what I go through, so please allow her body to switch with mine for a day." God, in his infinite wisdom, granted the man's wish. The next morning, sure enough, the man awoke as a woman. He arose, cooked breakfast for his mate, awakened the kids, set out their school clothes, fed them breakfast, packed their lunches, drove them to school, came home and picked up the dry cleaning, stopped at the bank to make a deposit, went grocery shopping, then drove home to put away the groceries, paid the bills, and balanced the checkbook. He cleaned the cat's litter box and bathed the dogs. Then it was already 1 p.m., and he hurried to make the beds, do the laundry, vacuum, dust, and sweep and mop the kitchen floor. Ran to the school to pick up the kids, and got into an argument with them on the way home. Set out cookies and milk and got the kids organized to do their homework, then set up the ironing board and watched TV while he did the ironing. At 4:30, he began peeling potatoes and washing vegetables for salad, breaded the pork chops, and snapped fresh beans for supper. After supper, he cleaned the kitchen, ran the dishwasher, folded laundry, bathed the kids, and put them to bed. At 9 p.m., he was exhausted, and though his daily chores weren't finished, he went to bed where he was expected to make love, which he managed to get through without complaint. The next morning he awoke and immediately knelt by the bed and said, "Lord, I don't know what I was thinking. I was so wrong to envy my wife's being able to stay home all day. Please, oh please, let us trade back." The Lord, in his infinite wisdom, replied, "My son, I feel you have learned your lesson, and I will be happy to change things back to the way they were. You'll just have to wait 9 months, though. You got pregnant last night." The only cow in a small town in Ireland stopped giving milk. Then the townfolk found they could buy a cow in Scotland quite cheaply. So they brought the cow over from Scotland. It was absolutely wonderful. It produced lots of milk every day, and everyone was happy. They bought a bull to mate with the cow to get more cows, so they'd never have to worry about their milk supply again. They put the bull in the pasture with the cow, but whenever the bull tried to mount the cow would move away. No matter what approach the bull tried, the cow would move away from the bull, and he was never able to do the deed. The people were very upset and decided to go to the vet, who was very wise, tell him what was happening, and ask his advice. Whenever the bull tries to mount our cow, she moves away. If he approaches from the back, she moves forward. When he approaches her from the front, she backs off. If he attempts it from the one side, she walks away to the other side. The vet rubbed his chin thoughtfully and pondered this before asking, "Did you, by chance, buy this cow in Scotland?" The people were dumbfounded, since no one had ever mentioned that they had brought the cow over from Scotland. "You are truly a wise vet," they said. "How did you know we got the cow from Scotland?" The vet replied with a distant look in his eye. "My wife is from Scotland." A young man called Chris from London wanted to buy a Christmas present for his new girlfriend. They hadn't been seeing each other for very long, and she lived in Scotland. Chris consulted with his sister and decided, after careful consideration, that a pair of good quality gloves would strike the right note. Not too romantic and not too personal. Off he went with his sister to Harrods, and they selected a dainty pair of fur-lined quality leather gloves. His sister bought a pair of sexy knickers for herself at the same time. Harrods had a free gift wrap offer, but the assistant mixed up the two items. The sister got the gloves, and Chris unknowingly got the knickers. Good old Chris sent off his gift-wrapped present in a parcel with the following letter. "Dear Maggie, I chose these because I've noticed that you are not wearing any when we go out in the evenings. If it had not been for my sister, I would have chosen the long ones with buttons, but she wears shorter ones, which are easier to remove. These are a very delicate shade, but the lady I bought them from showed me the pair she had been wearing for the past 3 weeks, and I hardly noticed any marks. I had her try yours on for me, and she looked really smart in them, even though they were a little bit tight on her. She also said that they rub against her ring, which helps keep it clean. In fact, she hasn't needed to wash it since she began wearing them. I wish I was there to put them on for you the first time, as no doubt many other hands will touch them before I have a chance to see you again. When you take them off, remember to blow into them a little bit, because they will be naturally a little damp from wearing. Just imagine how many times my lips will kiss them during the coming year. I hope you will wear them for me on our next date. All my love, Chris P.S. My mom tells me that the latest style is to wear them folded down with a little bit of fur showing." An Irish priest was transferred to Texas. Father O'Malley rose from his bed one morning. It was a fine spring day in his new West Texas mission parish. He walked to the window of his bedroom to get a deep breath of the beautiful day outside. He then noticed there was a jackass lying dead in the middle of his front lawn. He promptly called the local police station. The conversation went like this. "Good morning. This is Sergeant Jones. How might I help you? And the best of the day to yourself. This is Father O'Malley at St. Anne's Catholic Church. There's a jackass lying dead in my front lawn, and would you be so kind as to send a couple of your lads to take care of the matter?" Sergeant Jones, considering himself to be quite a wit and recognizing the foreign accent, thought he would have a little fun with the good father and replied, "Well now, Father, it was always my impression that you people took care of the last rites." There was dead silence on the line for a long moment. Father O'Malley then replied, "Aye, 'tis certainly true, but we are also obliged to notify the next of kin first, which is the reason for my call." A priest was being honored at his retirement dinner after 25 years in the parish. A leading local politician and member of the congregation was chosen to make the presentation and give a little speech at the dinner. He was delayed, so the priest decided to say his own few words while they waited. "I got my first impression of the parish from the first confession I heard here. I thought I had been assigned to a terrible place. The very first person who entered my confessional told me he had stolen a television set, and, when questioned by the police, was able to lie his way out of it. He had stolen money from his parents, embezzled from his employer, had an affair with his boss's wife, taken illegal drugs, and gave VD to his sister. I was appalled. But as the days went on, I knew that my people were not all like that, and I had, indeed, come to a fine parish full of good and loving people. Just as the priest finished his talk, the politician arrived full of apologies at being late. He immediately began to make the presentation and gave his talk. "I'll never forget the first day our parish priest arrived," said the politician. "In fact, I had the honor of being the first one to go to him in confession."